Yesterday, when the House was in committee and was considering the Members of Parliament Remuneration and Services Bill, the result of the vote on Brendan Horan's amendment to Part 2 was incorrectly announced as ayes 15, noes 105. In fact, what it should have been is ayes 16, noes 104. The record will be amended accordingly. Having dealt with that, we now come to private and local orders of the day, and so I therefore call on private and local order of the day number 1.
Kaipara District Council Validation of Rates and Other Matters Bill, second reading.
Mr. Speaker.
I call the honourable member Mike Sabin.
Thank you, sir. Can I firstly just acknowledge all members of the Select Committee from across this House, and in particular the Chair of the Local Government Environment Select Committee, for the diligent work that has been done, the very considered work that has been done on a matter that is very complex, is wide and varied in terms of the nature and consequence of the matters that the bill contains, and has been subject to much concern and comment from across the district. So I just want to firstly acknowledge everyone on the committee for the way they've got their head around that. Sir, no one is a fan of retrospective legislation, least of all, of course, the MP that is required or is asked to sponsor that legislation, sir. Having to retrospectively address failures of a council in following proper process and meet the requirements of the Local Government Act is something no one in this House takes any pleasure from, takes lightly, and is something that rightly gets an intense degree of scrutiny, sir, all that is available to this House, in fact. Let me make it quite clear, sir, from the outset, legislation of this nature is a last resort and reflective of significant failures by those who are entrusted by ratepayers. One of the questions I want to see answered on behalf of ratepayers in accepting that the Council got it wrong, and the Council does accept they got it wrong, sir, is it also the case that their overseers, Audit New Zealand, also failed in not identifying the failures of that Council? And I want to come back to that point, sir, a little later. Ratepayers should be able to have confidence in their elected councillors to carry out their core functions, but in this case, sir, they have been woefully let down. And rightly, they are upset, angry and frustrated, and have been for some time. But they also need the matters to be resolved, sir, in order to bring certainty and a sound platform to rebuild the district and have confidence in returning the district to democratic elections and all that that brings. Sir, this local bill we are dealing with is one part of a number of processes underway to help bring about this eventuality. Since 2012, in fact, not long after I was elected, sir, a number of interventions, investigations and actions have actually got underway. I just want to run through a couple of those. The implementation of a government-appointed review team and the subsequent report that saw the resignation of the sitting councillors at the time, the appointment of a team of commissioners, a review, an adjustment and adoption of a new long-term plan, an independent inquiry into the council auditor at the time, Audit New Zealand, inquiries from both the police and the Serious Fraud Office, with a view to establishing whether there was prima facie evidence of any criminal activity. Sir, to date there has been insufficient to warrant this, but nonetheless efforts continue. And inquiries by the commissioners into all other matters surrounded to the failures of this council, including that of the former CEO, Jack McKercher. And of course, sir, this local bill, which the commissioners asked me as a local member of Parliament to sponsor. This bill, sir, has become something of a lightning rod, rightly so. The plethora of issues that the commissioners, the council, have been confronted with, many of them do have a foundation back in this bill. However, sir, I will say that what we've seen, what we must do in looking at this bill is look at it through the lens in terms of the whole picture, and understand that fundamentally what this bill is doing is of far less controversy and of lesser consequence than many other of the activities that are going on. Notwithstanding that, sir, it is a very important part of the process. The question the commissioners were confronted with in dealing with the multitude of failures by the previous council is how could they best be addressed? What was the best mechanism to deal with these issues, to be able to move the district forward with the least amount of cost and the greatest amount of certainty? Sir, as we have seen with the Tasman District Council recently, other councils and some still to come, unfortunately there are times when this House must deal with retrospective legislation of this nature. It is not a desirable thing, it is not palatable, in fact it's quite repugnant in many respects, but it is necessary. And in this case, the decision was made that this course of action was the most appropriate in all the circumstances. While the bill is important to resolve the errors and failures of the councils, I wanted to see and assure this House that all ratepayers of this district that accountability is just as important as any one of the other processes that are underway. As a former police detective and seeking, I can assure the House that seeking justice runs through my veins. And as such, I insisted that a clause be included in the bill that clearly stipulates that no one is absolved of responsibility or accountability as a result of this legislation. And that clause, Clause 14, states that nothing in this Act affects the right of council or any other person to bring any proceedings against any person arising out of or in connection with any actions or omissions associated with the matters being validated in this Act. In layman's terms, this is not a get-out-of-jail-free card for those that have stuffed up and got it wrong. And I give my absolute and sincere commitment to all the ratepayers, to members of this House, to constituents of my electorate, that I will leave no stone unturned in seeking the accountability that they rightfully deserve. And where that can be sheeted home, I will ensure that I do everything I can to see that occur. So this bill doesn't in any way alter my determination to do that. Some have suggested that once the bill passed, all will be forgotten. I can give everyone an assurance that, at least on my part, that is certainly not the case. And anyone that knows me knows that I am not someone who gives his word lightly. Sir, the matters contained within the bill I'm going to leave to members of the committee to specifically address. I just want to cover off a couple more things in my contribution. It's important to point out that this bill doesn't validate the $30 million decision to expand the scheme, sir, so that is an aside from the matters that are being dealt with here. The Select Committee has made some very minor alterations to the bill, but most significantly have made it clear to the Commissioners that some of the penalties should be relieved. And there have been some very constructive conversations occur along these lines, sir. The bill validates the penalties. The bill validates the penalties on the rates that this. The bill validates the penalties on the rates that this bill validates. Sorry, this bill validates the penalties on the rates that this bill validates. So what I'm trying to say here. Well, we'll come to that, Mr. Peters. Come to that, Mr. Peters. You come up north with me, and we'll have a discussion about it. It's nice that you're bringing yourself into the conversation now. So the Select Committee, in its deliberations, believed that some of the penalties should be relieved, and I can see and concur with the views that have been shared in this respect, sir. I have worked with the Commissioners very closely to ensure that they can accommodate the requests of the Select Committee to address these. And I'm pleased to report, sir, that the Commissioners have in fact done this and provided assurances to the Committee as to how they will go about this. Sir, in terms of the penalties and these further penalties, sorry, I'm not going to have time, I'm not going to cover that off. Other members will no doubt cover that off, sir. In addition, in these further penalties which have been applied in 2013, which the Commissioners will seek to forgive, in addition there are other penalties over and above this that would commence as at the 1st of January 2014 on the balance of other outstanding rates. So these will also be forgiven, and if people are to pay their rates by the 30th of June 2014, they will be forgiven of those penalties. The Commissioners will work through this process with them, sir. I want to turn now to the auditors. So it's wrong for me to prejudge the outcome of the Auditor General's report or the report into the auditor, but can I say, sir, that if it is shown that the auditor has failed in their responsibilities as the overseer for these councillors, then that responsibility should be sheeted home. And if that responsibility is theirs, sir, then that is a responsibility that they owe the ratepayers of the Kaipara District to pay. So I say in this House, I say that if that failure is proven, then I ask that the Auditor-General seek to meet with the Commissioners and to ensure that the cost of that failure is met. Sir, it is not a cost that should be borne by the ratepayers of the district. How can a scheme go from $11 million to $62 million without the auditors raising those concerns, sir, without the auditors responding to the many issues that were brought to them by many across the district over a long period of time? Sir, those questions will be answered in the days and weeks to come as the report becomes evident. Sir, I want to support my constituents in ensuring that this bill passes before Christmas. The implications of it not are significant, and while I accept that many have been angry and upset about it, sir, it is a necessary part of the recovery of this district, and I commend all members to support this bill and support the ratepayers of the Kaipara.
I call the honourable member